The story of the 10 plagues. Once upon a time, in the land of Egypt, the Israelites were living as slaves under the rule of a mighty Pharaoh. God saw their suffering and chose Moses to lead them to freedom. Moses was a humble shepherd who had once lived in the Pharaoh's palace, but now he had returned to Egypt with a mission from God. God spoke to Moses through a burning bush, telling him to go to Pharaoh and demand the release of his people. Moses, feeling unsure, asked for help. God assured him that his brother Aaron would speak for him, and together they approached Pharaoh with courage. Moses and Aaron stood before Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go, so that they may worship me in the desert." But Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he refused to let the Israelites go. God then sent a series of miraculous signs called plagues to persuade Pharaoh. Each plague was a demonstration of God's power over the Egyptian gods and nature itself. The first plague turned the waters of the Nile River into blood. Fish died, and there was no water to drink. Yet, Pharaoh remained stubborn. Next came a plague of frogs. Frogs covered every inch of Egypt, hopping into homes and onto people. Still, Pharaoh would not relent. The third plague brought gnats that filled the air like dust. Despite this discomfort, Pharaoh's heart stayed hardened. Then came swarms of flies that tormented everyone except the Israelites in Goshen. Even then, Pharaoh refused to free God's people. The fifth plague struck down livestock throughout Egypt, horses, donkeys, camels, but spared those belonging to the Israelites. Yet again, Pharaoh did not budge. Next was a terrible plague of boils that afflicted both humans and animals with painful sores. Even then, Pharaoh remained unyielding. The seventh plague unleashed hail, a storm so fierce it destroyed crops and livestock caught outside. Despite its devastation, Pharaoh's heart stayed firm. Following this, came locusts that devoured whatever greenery remained after the hailstorm. Pharaoh still refused to listen. The ninth plague brought complete darkness over Egypt for 3 days, a darkness so thick it could be felt. Yet even this did not change Pharaoh's mind. Finally came the 10th and most devastating plague, the death of every firstborn son in Egypt. But God gave instructions to Moses. Each Israelite family was to sacrifice a lamb and mark their doorposts with its blood. When God passed through Egypt that night, he would see the blood and spare those homes, the event known as Passover. In grief and fear, after losing his own son during this last plague, Pharaoh finally relented. He summoned Moses and Aaron during the night and told them to take their people out of Egypt immediately. With great haste, and carrying unleavened bread because they had no time for it to rise, the Israelites left Egypt under God's protection. They followed Moses towards freedom through miraculous events such as crossing the Red Sea on dry ground while being pursued by Egyptian chariots. Thus began their journey towards becoming God's chosen nation. A story reminding us how faithfulness can overcome any challenge when guided by divine purpose.